The Ranch Rolodex is where ranching, business, and relationships come together. Hosted by Derek Jackson, Zach Hobson, and Daniel Unruh, the show is built around conversations with the people who know what it means to start from nothing and build something real. Every episode pulls a new contact from the Ranch Rolodex, the kind of people you would call when there's a problem to solve, a deal to make, or wisdom to pass down. Their stories about grit and faith, risk and stewardship, and the relationships that build ranches, businesses, and communities from the ground up. Welcome to the Ranch Rolodex.
Welcome to the Ranch Rolodex. We've got a special guest with us today. Dallas Mount is in the studio with us here in Council Grove. Dan Unruh is with us in the studio. Zach is joining us from Texas. And we're really lucky to have Dallas with us. He's the owner of Ranch Management Consultants, which is the parent company of Ranching for Profit and the Executive Link program. Dallas, thanks for being here.
Thank you. Excited to be here. Council Grove is a neat spot. Enjoyed exploring it.
Yeah. And, we have you on early on because Ranching for Profit is something that is a common thread for the three of us. And without that, we wouldn't be together, we wouldn't know each other, and we wouldn't know 3/4 of what we know about ranching. So thanks for that. And so I hope that we can talk a little bit about how we all came to go to Ranching for Profit, your background, and how you came to be the owner of the company, and kind of share our experiences with it so that this is not an interview about you tell us about it, but you can introduce it and we can tell you about how it benefited us.
Cool. Looking forward to the conversation.
Well, let's start with that. Unless Zach or Dan, unless you have anything. Dallas, why don't you just start with your background and what brought you to where you are today?
Sure. Yeah. So I did not grow up in ranching. I got interested in it about high school or so, and blessed to have a lot of opportunities to work for several different ranches from late high school all the way through my early married life. Then I went to Extension, University of Wyoming, did about 17 years there. Had the opportunity to work with some amazing people. Aaron Berger and I developed a ranch practicum class. It was an 8-day class for ranchers. We did that for about 10 years together. Through that led me to Ranching for Profit. And I attended as a student and was really blown away at what the course offered. So later, Dave Pratt gave me the opportunity to start teaching for them. That was really cool. Great opportunity. Got to meet some amazing people. And then later on, ended up buying the company from Dave. And so we've run it in Wheatland, Wyoming there now for the last 6 years.
Very good. Yeah. And I think, in the rest of the conversation, we'll have lots to say about our experiences with Ranching for Profit and Executive Link, but I probably got ahead of ourselves here. Could you give us just a little breakdown of what Ranching for Profit is, what Executive Link is, so people know what we're talking about when we discuss them?
Sure. So Ranching for Profit is the main thing that our company does. It's a 6-day business management school for people that are in agriculture. So it's something we do in person. We do about 12 to 14 of these 16-day schools a year. People sign up for the school. They come to us. We start on a Monday morning. We end on Saturday at noon. And during those 6 days, which seems like a really long time to be away from the farmer ranch, focused on your thing, but we walk through, business management 101 from nuts to bolts, economics, finance, leadership, mission, vision, some grazing stuff, some production stuff, but most of it is really around business leadership. So that's the Ranching for Profit school in a nutshell. Is that 6-day program. It's most people that come to it say it's like nothing else they've ever been to, right? I mean, it's not like a college class. It's not like an extension class. This is real life, practical, applied skills and tools that we know work on farm and ranch businesses. So that's the Ranching for Profit school. We've been doing it about 40 years. On average, we put about 300 to 400 people that come through the school in those 12 to 14 classes. So we've got a pretty broad reach over those 40 years. The thing that we do after the Ranching for Profit school is what we call Executive Link, what we often refer to as EL. And so EL is a follow-up program to the Ranching for Profit school where we put graduates of Ranching for Profit on advisory boards for each other. They meet 3 times a year. Each of those meetings are 2.5 days long, and they look into each other's businesses and provide strategic level advice to one another and help hold each other accountable to make sure things get done in the business. So that's Ranching for Profit and Executive Link in a nutshell.
Yeah, and I think that brings us to a really good point. All of us are different, and we all have taken different things from ranching for profit, and we all have come to ranching for profit differently. And so, Zach and Dan, guys, why don't we go around and just kind of explain how we found out about ranching for profit and how we decided to go and our experiences there.
So I was listening to Working Cows podcast quite a bit a few years ago, just trying to figure out something. Something had to change. I was kind of freshly full time in my cattle business and just knew that I had to do something different. And so I was grasping for any kind of knowledge I could find, and I was just burning up the podcast and kept listening to everyone Dallas was on. And man, I just remember thinking, like, man, this guy's energy is like, this dude is pumped about life. And I was like, I've got to go to one of these schools. And so we started looking at them, and we never would pick one. And I think Emily was home. She was home on maternity leave with Conway. It was in January, and I was like, you know what? Let's just do it. Like, let's find one. We found one in Billings. I said, let's make a trip out of it. So we left on a Wednesday, stayed in Northwest Oklahoma at a friend's place, and then the next night stayed in the Medicine Bow Mountains north of Laramie. Then 2 nights in Yellowstone, all camping in the back of her Suburban on an air mattress. Then made our way to Billings, and we thought we were gonna get to fly fish and kind of sightsee around Billings in the evenings. Boy, did we learn something. We're sitting there doing homework every night till 9 o'clock, but it was awesome. And so that's kind of how we did it. I just knew something had to change. And if I didn't just finally do it, and that's what I know several people, friends of mine that listen to every podcast, and they're going to know exactly what I'm talking about when they listen to this. They're like, I just can't, like, 6 days is too far. Just can't get away for 6 days. And, oh, it's too much money. And it's like, yeah, but I could not tell you another investment in my business that has had the return that it has. And why can't you get away for 5 or 6 days? Like, are you a slave to your operation? Like, if you can't leave for a week, so I don't know, just the anybody that's listening to this that has, like, doubts of, "I can't get away," or "It's too much money," I promise you it's not. Like, if you have to, this may not be good advice, but put it on a freaking credit card and go, and just, like, it'll pay for itself, I promise you.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's something that we talked about yesterday a little bit. It's like we're sitting in the top of a cattle market, especially cow calf guys are doing well right now. And it would be wise to be investing in yourself when we have this excess cash flow that's not normal. But I think just human nature is that when things are good, we kind of think things are good and things are always going to be good. But really, it's when things get tough that we say, okay, it's time to change something. And, so hopefully we could get better at that and realize, like, when things are good, they might not be good forever. So let's prepare for when things are lean. But I do also think that it's a wise thing that when you do have problems, there's an answer out there. And we found a lot of answers in Ranching for Profit and the Executive Link program. So, Dan, what about you?
So I've known about ranching for profit. I don't know. I think I first came to know it back in 16 or 17. I didn't end up going through the school until 2021, I believe. And it was Oklahoma City is when we went down. So, my wife was going through vet school. I was working for a ranch out at Manhattan after I'd got done with college and was still waiting for her to go through vet school and stuff like that. So I had always known about ranching for profit, like I said, since like 2016 or 17. And it was always something I wanted to go do because that's all I ever wanted to do was just run cows and ranch. So there obviously wasn't anything to go back home to. And you'd always heard, you're never going to be able to ranch unless it's, through the womb, through the tomb, or through the altar. And, obviously my wife, they had a little bit of a small operation back home, but it wasn't going to be big enough to sustain us. And I obviously wasn't getting it, inheriting it. And dang sure wasn't born into it. Anyways, fast forward to 2021. Well, I guess I'll back up. My wife graduated vet school. I always kind of wanted to stay in Manhattan because I just loved the area. But she's like, no, we're going to kind of go. And she was kind of under the same pretense of the fact of, her dad always had a job. You go to work, you have a retirement, everything like that, just the norm, right? That paradigm. So she's like, no, we're gonna move home. You're gonna get a job, and so on and so forth. And I was like, okay, well, anyways, and nothing to her. It wasn't her fault. I mean, that's just what she always knew. It's kind of what I always knew growing up too. So we went back home, kind of bought into her family's small operation, and I mean, within probably 2 or 3 years of being there, we owned the most cows in that outfit. And then one day we just kind of woke up and was like, man, we are spending a lot of money on this place and a lot of money. We're not getting anything in return. And I don't know what it was, but it was like a light switch, had turned on of like if we're going to do this, I mean, this is just a hobby. Well, neither one of us wanted it to be a hobby. Like we wanted it to be a business. So it was like, we got to do something. Well, so then we went to Ranch for Profit in Oklahoma City in 2021, came back, sat down with her parents, had a proposal written up for them, and it was about the time her dad was retiring. It was like, hey, we would like to manage this cow herd for everybody. And they weren't really too interested in that deal. Her dad had stated like, hey, I'm retiring, and that's what I wanted to do when I retired was just run my cows. Cool, man. So we're like, all right, this ain't gonna work here. So, we're gone. We sold all the cows, came back, sold all the cows, and went our own direction. In the 3 years since then, man, it's crazy to see where we have gotten. And I mean, it's truly amazing just to where we're at right now. It's just really, really cool. And, that's kind of and of course, at the time when we were in college, we didn't have the money to go do. I mean, we were living on bean and weenies, So that's one thing about it is we saved up the money, we went, and just to like everybody else said, it's like 6 days. Yeah, it's an investment, is what it is. It's an investment. Yeah, it's money, but it's man, it is an investment that is so worth well taking, and if you do it smart, and I mean the return is just next to none on it. So that's pretty much the story of us.
Very good. Yeah, I think there was a lot there that, even the school talks about. There was a surprising amount in the school that was good for me, but it was just outside of what I was used to that has to do with succession and family relationships and stuff like that. And I think that there was something like your parents don't owe you the ranch, but they do owe you clarity in what's going on. And that's something about these conversations like, listen, there's no frills and this isn't polished, this is real life. And so, I mean, how many times do you see that in a ranch that there is friction in transition? And I think that Dan did a really good job there of saying, okay, the cards are on the table. Now we know what it is and we can make a move now. So, well, listen, Carrie and I started kind of putting some cows together after we got married, and I started going to some grazing schools, and that's what really got my fire lit. I got really interested in grazing and grazing management, and we started with some registered cows and some commercial cows from my family, and so there was a lot of that I enjoyed, kind of putting things together. But it was dang sure a hobby, And when we started, we were two incomes and no kids, so there was some money to put towards it, and Carrie and I both grew up that way, so we enjoyed it. We got two boys now, and Carrie stays home with them, and so all of a sudden it's like that little hobby you had is going to have to start paying its own bills. It was just kind of a culmination of things where I was getting more interested in business management and ranch management and managing what we had, and there was a need for it. But I always thought that, like that ranching for profit is for the big guys, and we're just not there. And maybe someday, but we're just not there. It's an investment and it takes some time, which it's not an unreasonable investment and it's not an unreasonable amount of time, but it's not an afternoon class either. In our story, there was some cost share that was available for continuing ed through the Tallgrass Legacy Alliance. And that was the thing that made me say, okay, let's go. And so in 2019, I went to the class down in Dallas, and it was incredible. The content was incredible, and it is, and still is, but the people, or just, I mean, that's the thing is, and it's hard to understand because I think so many of us get into ranching or are in ranching because we just want to be out in the hills with a horse and a dog and some cows. And you think like, I don't want to talk to people. I don't want to deal with people. But man, the people part of it has been amazing. And so that's kind of how we came to it. Went the first time in 19. And in that class, I think it was mentioned that you should take the class again. You should wait a couple of years, take the class again, do it in a different location with a different instructor. So I kind of like Zach, it was like, well, I'd like to go to Montana, And so I thought like I'm going to take the class in Billings, and go up there and make a trip of it. And I did go up and it was through a different instructor. I mean, you taught the one in Dallas and then John Locke was teaching the one up in Billings. And so that kind of met both of those criteria, but I went up a day early and visited a ranch up there and kind of saw some sights, But boy, when you get into the class, like there's two things that I would say from my experience taking the class. Number one, don't plan on doing a bunch of stuff in the evening. Not because there's homework, but at the end of the day, you're just so drained that it's like it's time to relax. And then number two was, again, it was like I was doing it on a budget. And so I had packed some stuff, like stinking tuna and bananas, that I was going to eat for supper and stuff. Man, budget some money to go out to eat with people while you're there. Just because the relationships, like it's not very often that you get to be in a room that's full of that many people that are that way. And I would say anybody that's going, even if you're an introvert, take some money to go out to eat at night and find somebody new every night and go out to eat with them.
That's good advice. Yeah.
Yeah, one of the cool things about that class, Derek and I were both in that, and there were people from all over the United States. There was a lady in there from Peru, I believe, California, Canada, Georgia, Florida, Texas, several Texas people. It was so cool to be in a room with, I mean, what, Dallas, there are 60, how many people are in a class typically?
54 is a full class.
Okay. Well, I feel like we had every bit of that. It seemed like more. It was so cool just to be there with that many people from all over the country and hear of how their operations work. And you're like, oh, wow. And that's crazy. I would never think to do something like that. Like the coolest part, which it's not at first, is when you walk in there and they tell you you're not sitting with who you came with and you're not allowed to eat with them. But I love it because you make relationships that way. And the people that actually did, abide by it, I think, as far as the eating and stuff, but in the class, everybody had to sit at different tables. And but it was just so cool because if you didn't do that and you sat at the table with who you came with and you did not get out of that comfort zone, you're not going to get out of the school what you need to get out of it. So I'm very thankful for that piece of it. I think that is a huge part of it, and it truly elevates the experience of the class.
Most schools, we don't have that rule, but Emily had called ahead of time and asked if we would put that rule in place at that school.
I do not doubt it after being in the car with me for 27 hours.
I'm joking, obviously. We do that for every class. It's pretty intentional. But there are some people that walk in and they're like, I think I'm going to turn around and go back home when they realize they don't get to sit with their spouse. And I usually ask them, I say, give me a day and I'll check in with you. And by the second day, they're like, okay, I'm happy where I'm at.
Yeah, that's great. But, I doubt you're kidding about Emily. Anyways, so I think another thing that we can do, like we've talked about, Dallas, lots of people know who you are. Lots of people know about Ranching for Profit. You've been on lots of podcasts, but I think that the valuable thing that we can present here that genuinely we want for our listeners is the encouragement to go, or the encouragement to go if they're interested, and then also an understanding of what we took from the class and also Executive Link. But I'd say let's just start with that because, like I said, the three of us are very close friends, but we're very, very different. And so I'd say Zach and Dan, like, let's just go around the room and talk about the takeaways that we had from the class so that if anybody's listening and wondering about the content or wondering if it applies to them, maybe they'll get a little insight from us.
My takeaways from it were, holy crap, like I've got a lot of stuff to work on and still do. Like we want to go back. We've not picked a date yet, but we definitely need to go back because I have not applied all the principles, but we've definitely done a lot of them, but there's still a lot to apply. But it's just there's so much to take in those 6 days that whenever you leave there and you're headed home, you are freaking fired up and ready to change the world. And you get back and you start on it. And that's, I think, why Executive Link is so important to me, is because 3 times a year we're being pushed to look at our businesses and improve upon our businesses. And if I would have just went to the school and not joined Executive Link, I feel like I would have not have continued it like I have, because I need that push. And there's a lot of people that need that push. There's probably a lot of people that went to RFP and didn't sign up for Executive Link and are thinking, well, nothing's really changed. And it's like, well, are you still trying to better your business? Are you still trying to improve upon what you have? Like, sign up. If you're an alumni, sign up for Executive Link. If anybody that's listening to this and is an alumni that hasn't signed up, like, do it, because it is a absolute game changer. So, I mean, that's kind of what I took away from it was, yes, you learn a lot, but the constant improvement is what makes you better. I mean, that's simple, but to get into Executive Link was what changed it for us. And I think Dallas, I think y'all show a graphic at the school that shows the profitability of ranches that do not go to RFP, then they go to RFP, and then they join Executive Link and show the levels of profitability that these are real ranches that y'all have taken these numbers for and have seen a huge bump in profitability. Like, it's a gross percentage. I can remember what, because it's been several years, but I do remember that slide. And whenever I saw that, I was like, that's it. I'm doing it.
Yeah, there's a slide in return on assets based on average ranch, ranching for profit alumni ranch, and then executive link member, where you take substantial jumps in that return on assets.
Yeah, it seems like I've heard that before too. So many people say that, or there have been people that have said they took the class just so they could get to Executive Link. They were probably surprised by how beneficial the class was, but Executive Link is definitely a great program too. So, Daniel, what about you? What have you learned?
So when I went through it, it was 7 days, or yeah, I think it was a 7-day course when I went through it, or 6.5, or however you want to say it. At the end of it, or well, I mean, at the very beginning of it, so this phrase is always stuck in my mind. And I believe you said it because it was you and Jordan that taught my class. And the first day we were in there, the first afternoon, I'll never forget. I think it was you. You stood up in front of the class and you said, "All right, we're gonna throw a bunch of stuff at you, and a lot of stuff's gonna be foreign, and your guys are gonna be thinking there ain't no way this crap works anywhere." And you had mentioned something, and I'm not gonna try to quote it, but something to the fact of, whatever you take away from this class, or before we even start, the only thing I ask is that you guys keep an open mind. And I made the decision that right then and there, I was like, you know what? I'm going to keep an open mind. And that has always stuck with me. And so I appreciate that. And very, very soon into it, I was like, this is like a associate's degree in 6 days in business. Like, this is some cool crap, and I hate numbers. Like, I absolutely hated numbers. I hated math. I hated all that. And now I'm like, man, this is kind of fun. I'm sitting here doing cattle squares and all this other stuff and running my numbers and looking at balance sheets and projections. And I'm going, man, if this doesn't get you excited, man, I don't want to be around you. I'm like, and, so like me and Ellie will be doing projections or something like that. And, I'd just be like, dude, look at this, look at that. And she's really cool. She's just kind of like, oh yeah, that's really, that's awesome. Good job. Well, so she's always been a numbers person, but man, that was one of my biggest takeaways from it. It was just that was like, man, I basically got associates in business in 6 days. And then kind of like Zach, whenever our class ended, I was probably one of the first 2 or 3 people to sign up for EL. And my deal of it was, like, if we're going to do this, and we'd both kind of talked, through the evenings while we were there, of like, because it had been mentioned, prior to the ending of class, and like, well, do we don't really have anything, is this something that would be beneficial to us, even though we don't have an operation per se of our own? And we had just made the decision of like, screw it. If we're going to do it, we're not just going to dip a toe in it. We're going to go all in. So, and we did, we joined EL. So we've been on EL for 3 years now, 4 years. And it has totally just elevated our operation. I mean, like I said, we came back to Ellie's parents' place, and it went from, hey, now we know that there's nothing here for us. We're gonna go out on our own. And I think it was, it was either you or Zach or somebody. I think it was Zach in one of our turnarounds, or it was either our turnarounds or we were putting our agenda together for the next meeting. And he goes, whoever it was said, everything that we have ever put on their agenda, they have completed. There's not one thing they have not came back with not completed. And when you're held to an accountability like that, it gives you drive and purpose. Like you got 5 other boards in front of you going, well, why didn't you get this done? Like, I don't want that, I don't want that happen, that feeling.
I'm
So,
used to that.
well, your wife got in my butt one day about it. So
She did, and she thought you were really mad at her.
well, I'm really scared of Emily. How about that? So, anyways, ranching for profit, I can't say it enough. And like I said, earlier, being able to see somebody that see the transformation that you went through with both personally and in your operation, and them seeing that from the outsider looking in, and then that giving them courage and saying, hey, that is freaking cool. I want that for myself. I want that for my family and my operation. And then and then turn around to see them go through it and then come back and be like, now I understand why you're so excited when you get to talk about this stuff. Like that's awesome. And I mean, I had nothing to do with that. All I did was go through the class, right? And I just came back and said how, man, it's just been great, right? So I feel honored just to be a part of that, even though I have nothing to do with RFP besides, being involved in it through EL and going through the school. But if this podcast or, any of our connections can help somebody else have that feeling, man, hands down, that's the only thing I care about.
Just because you don't like, if somebody's listening to this and they don't have an operation already, or they're small, like, don't let that stop you, because we've got a business on our board that is in the starting stage to, a large business. And if I would have been on an executive link on a board or been through Ranch for Profit before I started, man, I don't know where I'd have been today. Like, if you're just starting out, if you're a small operator, like, don't let that stop you. Don't think that that hinders you. Like, oh, I can't go to that. Yes, go, because you're not going to make mistakes, or you're going to have people that are going to help you avoid mistakes that can put you so much further ahead than if you would have done it the long way, learning from your mistakes. Get around people that have been there, done that, had the mistakes, can help you avoid the mistakes. And that's one of the coolest things about the whole RFP RMC culture is every single thing I've ever been to that is associated with RMC is a positive mindset. You don't hear anybody down on the weather, down on this, down on that. Everybody is positive. Everybody wants you to succeed. And you might get made fun of. I know whenever I went to Ranch for Profit, there were people, oh, you're going to Ranch for Profit. That's dumb. Like, making fun of me for going. Well, like, hey, that's all right, buddy. You can make as much fun of me as you want, but like, what you say is not going to affect my business. Get out of your comfort zone, go start living a little bit.
And I think that, we get so tied up into this is just a ranching deal or farm deal, but ranching for profit is not just about cattle and crops, right? Who is welcome?
Who is welcome? That's an interesting question. So the big secret is Ranching for Profit is a business management school that uses cattle as the widget, right? So an interesting thing is we have a lot of people who have been successful in other businesses that are now coming to ranching, that come to ranching for profit thinking, okay, I'm going to go, learn how to apply business stuff to ranching. When they leave the school, they often tell me, I've gotten a lot more value out of this class that I'm applying to my other business. And yes, I've gotten value from my ranch too, but the main value of this class was things I'm going to apply to my other business rather than just for the ranch. So they came looking for like, how do I feed cows? How do I breed cows? How do I graze? And they left with some real business skills on how to do those other things. So yeah, it's really for anybody that wants business quality outcomes for whatever they're doing in life, right? Whether that's ranching or grazing or running a car wash, a laundromat, right? Whatever you might have.
Yeah, and there's a lot more that goes into the school than just business. And that's something that I was surprised by and encouraged by, that, there's so much about, well, decision making, relationships, grazing, mindset. I mean, I definitely enjoyed the numbers part of it, the finance and economics part of it the most, but just the value that comes from all those other things too. And I think that these two guys are really good at some of those fringe things, you might say. Zach he's got that entrepreneur mindset. He's excellent with people. And so I could see there's a lot of there's a lot of the school that, would be very beneficial to people like that, or people like me that are not good with people. And Daniel is a master grazer, and we got to see that some this summer with our summer EL meeting at his ranch. That he has definitely taken some of those things and just really done well with them. So, but I really enjoy the business part of it, and I would say, you talk about in the school, you talk about breakthroughs, and breakthroughs are 10x or whatever they are. And I guess what I don't want to do is sell some kind of snake oil thing where it's like, oh my gosh, you're going to come back after 6 days and be rich. And there certainly are breakthroughs that happen. And I think that, Dan kind of talked about that with the outcomes, that it's like he knew where everything was and could act on that. But for me, I would say that the effect that ranching for profit has had on my life is more like a ship that just turned a little bit and started going down this other path and examining things a little bit differently than what I had been before. A lot of that has to do with the three secrets, to increasing profit, of reducing overheads and increasing the gross margin per unit and increasing turnover. And when I first learned about those things, I put them in that order. And I thought, yeah, there's these three things. And first, you need to attack overheads. And then you need to do the gross margin, and then increase turnover. And that's not a bad thing, but it doesn't apply like that. Those principles apply everywhere, but not necessarily in that order. And not necessarily, there's not a prescription of which one is most significant. And I would say, too, this was mentioned a little bit earlier. I think Zach said something about people worrying that they're too small, that their business isn't big enough, or they're not ready or whatever. I think I heard you say on another podcast about hiring people that you probably need one before you think you do, And I would say the same thing about going to the school, or if you've been to the school, getting into Executive Link. I would focus more on doing it and then making that investment pay for itself than I would thinking, we're not quite ready, because it's really helped all of us tremendously. There's no doubt that I wouldn't be doing what we're doing today. And that's not to say that we're some big operation, but we're a lot more efficient than we used to be. And I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Ranching for Profit and Executive Link.
Cool. I appreciate you guys sharing those stories. An interesting thing to me listening to them is if we walked out into cow country and we started asking people, well, what do you know about ranching for profit, right? What do you think about this? There's a feeling out there that, and I've heard this from people who, were sitting there. In fact, there was a guy real high up in the cattle industry, and he goes, "Oh, I said, well, what do you do?" He said, "I run Ranch for Profit." He goes, "Oh," he said, "Yeah, we can't ranch like what you guys tell us to ranch like." And I'm like, "Oh, tell me more." And he's like, "Oh yeah, well, everybody at that school just tells you, you got to calve in May, you got to do it without equipment, right? You got to be really, really super lean. Probably shouldn't feed your cows much of anything, maybe a little bit of salt and mineral, and don't run equipment, don't ever buy equipment." And I'm like, "Oh, that's what we tell everybody, huh?" And he's like, "Yeah, that's what you guys tell everybody to do." So, but it's interesting. Very little of the conversation that you guys brought up had anything to do with selling all your equipment. Everybody should calve in May kind of thing. We didn't hear that, right? So this feeling out there in the country that we have a prescription that we're promoting. Just hearing your stories, nobody's solution to their business was the same, and none of them followed this supposed prescription. So
Yeah, let me just squash that right now, because the way that ranching for profit has taught me to think has caused me to consider creep feeding calves on grass with cows. Because when corn's cheap and the value of gain is high, it's like, well, that input would pay for itself. It's an increased, cost, but the weight gain, comes off of it. And so again, it's like all of that is examined in terms of overheads, gross margin, turnover. And yeah, so whoever that was wrong.
Well, I think also, Dallas, going back to that, what you're saying, I did sell my hay stuff after I left the school, but I didn't like, why did I have all this extra equipment and me trying to do everything myself whenever I can buy hay so much cheaper?
Well, and so your guys' business, the mission is profitable, or I got it right here, healthy land, happy families, and profitable businesses, right?
that's it.
And the thing of it is that what's interesting is that you go out and you talk to somebody, like you were talking to that guy, like, well, that just doesn't work here, right? And you guys don't, just to say what you said, we don't tell you guys to sell all the equipment, don't feed any hay. Like, those are just examples of what people have done that have been through ranching for profit, right? And what I find really interesting is that you guys bring in like experts in their fields. Like, you got Jordan Steele, he's a numbers guy, right? So can you talk about how you put your team together and how that, like, their expertise in their fields actually brought all this together? Like, how does all their expertise help deliver this content in a way to people that says, well, it's just, these are just people that, they're just trying to sell a product, versus, no, these are people that actually know what they're talking about? Because it's like, I mean, I know you're good with numbers, but it's not like you're sitting there teaching Jordan's portion of it, and Jordan's trying to teach a portion of, the grazing portion or something like that.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to talk about that. That's probably one of the things I'm most proud about is as we look back on the history of the 6 years since I've run the company, is the team we've been able to assemble. So just for scale wise, that we have about 7 instructors on our current instructor roster, and those are people who are teaching ranching for profit. I think when we put that team together, some of the things we look for first are very mission driven people, right? So that mission that you read, healthy land, happy families, profitable businesses, that, I mean, the people on our team are intensely focused on helping our clients achieve the outcomes that our clients want, right? The other part of our team is our executive link facilitators, and that's a much broader team. I think we've got about 18 to 20 people on that roster now of people who are doing it. And those are folks who have come out of the EL program. So, ranchers who joined Executive Link, who showed a real talent in the boardroom for helping facilitate conversations and lead that process. And then we've just brought them into our team to help give back on that.
Yeah, and I want to touch on something that was mentioned there about, having to do with the kind of mission and vision of ranching for profit. And also, I don't know, something that we've talked about earlier with relationships is just the mental health part of it. I think there's a part in the class that is pretty powerful concerning mental health. That's definitely something that we don't talk about enough as ranchers and business owners. But even in Executive Link, I think that that's something that we examine enterprises based on. Is I think so many times as ranchers, we think that something we're doing is a means to an end, or we have to do it, or whatever. And, just for example, listen, like, I don't want to just trash people that put up hay, but I don't put up any hay, and it's been raining every 3 days. And I drive around and think, thank goodness I'm not putting up any hay. But listen, some people run haying operations fantastically. So, don't take that as a prescription, just as an example. But I think that there are definitely enterprises that I have been doing that are 98% of the angst in my life. And so we also look at things that not just what's the gross margin on this, how does it fit your resource base, but also like, what's it doing to your life? What's it doing to your family? Some of the most powerful meetings, and I'm just going to call it like it is, EL meetings that I've been in, you've got a husband that is a builder and a doer and a grower, and he wants to go set the world on fire. And somebody says to the wife, "What do you think?" And so I think that there's much more to Ranching for Profit and Executive Link than just running a business or running a grazing system or something like that. It really encompasses a lot of the other things that we don't often think about and probably don't talk about enough.
I'm glad you brought that up. There was a school a couple years ago, and we were having the mental health. We just opened the conversation at the school around mental health, and I made the comment something about rural American men have a similar suicide rate to combat veterans. And this guy was a combat veteran himself and was just out of the military. And he stood up and he said, "Actually, you're wrong." He said, "Rural American men have about 3 times the suicide rate from combat veterans." And he said it is, and I'm not sure that statistic is valid. I didn't research it myself, but he was sure of it. And it just set us back to be like, man, wow, I mean, here we are, like the number one class of people who are at risk of mental health and suicide that goes along with it. And there's so little discussion about it in the normal circles. So yeah, we just try to normalize that conversation and really talk about the things that matter. And I think for a lot of men, right, we put this weight on our shoulders of it's my job to carry this thing on. And especially these multi-generational family ranches, right? Hey, this was started by my grandfather, my great grandfather, or great great grandfather in some cases. And here I am, and I'm feeling the stress of the decisions that were made. And, maybe things aren't going well. And so I'm putting all that on my shoulders and trying to carry that. And it breaks a lot of people. And without an outlet of coming together and talking about the decisions and analyzing those things and then having a team around you and having that support structure. I mean, you could totally understand why it happened. So let's break that cycle. Let's give people the opportunity to talk about it in helpful ways, the opportunity to dig in and say, okay, here's the situation. So what do I do? Right. Rather than just put my head down and go harder. Because for a lot of people, that's not a reasonable solution.
Yeah, and one thing I would kind of say to if anybody, listening to this has any questions or thoughts or anything on the school they'd like to talk about, I'm sure Derek can put a link in there with some email addresses or something where people can reach out and see, if they want to know a little bit more about it. I mean, we would love to tell y'all about it just because it's been so beneficial to our lives. And like I said, 3 years ago, I would have never thought I'd have been in the situation that I am now. And the only thing that's changed to get me there was joining the RFP family. And so you can make some pretty awesome changes in a short period of time. And don't be afraid to try something new. But like, if anybody wants to talk about or has any questions about it, reach out to one of the three of us. We'd love to talk to you about it and just tell you how it's, changed our lives, if we didn't touch on that in this episode. But I would definitely, if anybody wants to talk about it, reach out to me.
Yeah, and I think that's something that I feel like I have to say all the time too. None of us work for you. We don't get a kickback for this. There's no like profit sharing on new people that take the class or join EL. This is just our story. The whole Ranch Rolodex is based on helping people with the things that by exposing them to the things that have helped us, and this has helped all of us. And so that's a genuine desire of ours is to get people, in the know about ranching for profit just because it's helped us so much.
Yeah, and I don't know if Dallas, if Derek's talked to you about it or not, but the three of us would love the idea of doing like a ranching for profit scholarship for somebody that I think once we get to a certain point, it's something we're going to offer, have people send in applications and then us do, like a selection process and sponsor somebody to go. And I think just because it's meant so much to us, and I feel like there's other people that'll, help us out monetarily accomplish that for somebody. And so that's something that it's kind of Derek's little brainchild, but we're all supporting of it. So that's one thing we're hoping to be able to offer with this is maybe once a year or something. We do something like that for somebody.
So Zach asked me and Derek a question on our intro podcast. It was, what is one thing that you hope that this podcast does for somebody? But I'm going to take that question, I'm going to flip it and say, and ask you, what is the one thing that you hope that RFP does for somebody?
The easy things to say would be, oh, it's going to make their business more profitable. It's going to make their, land healthier, those kind of things. I think that those are nice things. And to say it, to hope it does it, because I get to see the evidence it does it all the time. But the thing that's most rewarding for me is when I hear stories like what you guys have shared today. Is it gave me the confidence to move my business where I wanted it to. And then I hear people say, kind of like what you did, Daniel, is, yeah, I thought this was about business and making decisions, but really it's about my marriage got better. My life got better. I feel like I'm in a better place as a dad, as a husband, as a business leader. And those are the most rewarding things because money comes and goes, right? And having a profitable business is cool. But at the end of the day, if there's nobody to share it with, who cares? So I think that's really the thing for me is that if we're being a part of our clients making better decisions that give them better lives, more rewarding lives, to serve their communities, to save the Flint Hills, to to do whatever it is that they're inspired to do. That's what's rewarding for us. So if we can be a part of that, that's super cool.
Yeah, and we talk a lot here about wanting to have a couple of friends that are above you, that are mentors that you can look up to and learn from, and having some friends beside you that you can encourage and they can encourage you along your journey, but also having folks behind you that you can invest in. We have got a scholarship program started. And I think when we started talking about this thing, it was like, oh yeah, it'll be easy, And then like so many things you get into it and it's like, oh boy. So listen, this whole podcast is about getting it done, even if it's not perfect, even if it's not polished. This is real life and we're going to put it out there. We have two forms that will link to this episode. One of them would be for those that would like to pledge a scholarship to somebody that wants to go to Ranching for Profit or another continuing education. So if you've been and you want to donate to help the next person come or go, then click on that link, fill out your information, and you will keep your money for now, but you'll let us know with a pledge how much you'd like to support. And then there's a form for those applicants that would like to go to Ranching for Profit or some other continuing ed. And so you guys click on that link, fill out your information, and then we're going to play matchmaker for the time being, where if Dan got on there and applied, and Dallas, if you said, I'd like to pledge a certain amount, then we can say, okay, hey, Dallas, I've got your information. Here's Dan. He wants to go to Ranching for Profit. You said you'd like to pledge this much. And then we would make that connection, just because looking into it, the whole nonprofit and dealing with scholarships and all that sort of stuff was much hairier than I thought it was going to be. But we're not going to let that kill the good that we can do. And so we're going to go ahead and do it this way right now. And we'll work on making it a little better and tax deductible and all of the other shiny stuff as we go.
Cool. Love it. We talked about this at supper a little bit last night. I really like your idea. So thank you guys for making that happen. For those people who are listening to this and thinking, I'm going to apply for that money. Here's what I want to tell you is it's your job to, in the future, be the person helping the next person. I think about it as, so the person that's donating the money, they're the ones kind of leaning over the edge of a steep hill or a cliff and sticking their hand out and pulling that next person up there with them, right? And so now it's their job to get on top of the hill, brush yourself off a little bit, and then reach down and pull that next person up when it's your turn. So I wouldn't look at this as a handout. I'd look at it as a hand up, and and then turn around and do that for somebody else. What I think it's important is that the people that are at Ranching for Profit have skin in the game. So I think we talked about this at supper last night. I don't think you guys should pay the full tuition for somebody, and they're going to have their travel and lodging on top of that. So when somebody, like when a couple comes to Ranching for Profit, they're going to have $3,000 for the first person, $2,500 for the second person. So there's $5,500, and they're going to have their travel and lodging. So call each of those $1,000 again. So they're going to have $7,000 to $8,000 invested at being in Ranching Profit. That's a significant amount of money, right? It's something that you're going to take a serious choice in making that investment, right? I don't think it's somebody else's job to pay for your professional development. I think that's your job to pay for your professional development. But I recognize that sometimes that level of investment can get in the way of making that choice. So just like what you said, Derek, when you came to Ranching Profit, you found there was somebody else that was willing to help you make that happen. And that was the difference between making that choice. So if that's what it takes, great. But then I hope in the future, people have the attitude of, all right, every year, I'm going to invest in myself professionally some way. Ranching for Profit might be one of those this year. I love it that you guys are willing to do this, not just Ranching for Profit, but for other things. So maybe it's a sell by marketing school. Maybe it's a stockmanship school. Maybe it's a grazing school. Maybe it's something outside of agriculture that you're going to go to help yourself develop. But I think that needs to be a part of the normal rhythm of life is developing in ourselves to make ourselves better.
Yeah. And so ranching for profit, you don't have to be perfect to go to. Like, that's one thing, like, I was the most worried about was like, because like we had our financials and that was pretty bad. I'm not going to lie. But that's the greatest thing about it is that ranching for profit, you don't have to have perfect financials. You don't have to have everything in line. Would you rather see somebody come in with financials that might not, that are all over the board and it's just completely chaos at home versus somebody coming in and be like, oh, hey, your financials are fine. You're like, I don't even know why you're here. So can you touch base on that? Like, what would be, is that something that you would rather see somebody come in there, like I said, with financials that might, not make a whole lot of sense, kind of some chaos at home, or somebody is like, because in my perspective, it's just like this podcast. It's like everything else. And it was like whenever we went, it was like we don't have everything in line, but if we wait for the perfect moment, it'll never happen. You will never go. You will never start it. And I think between us three, even all of us here, it's kind of we'd rather be like, screw it. Like we do not have our ducks in a row at all, but we're just going to jump in and do it and figure it out, learn how to swim.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad to hear that we don't have to be perfect to go to Ranching Profit. Otherwise, our client base would be really slim. Most of the people that come through the school are like what you described you and Ellie were when you came through, right? They feel like things are kind of chaotic on the business management side. And those are our people, right? So we love them. Bring it. Let's go. Let's sit down. It would be more the rare person that comes in and was walking in the door like, I've really got this figured out. That's generally not the case. So yeah, I don't know that I'd say I have a preference for working with one over the other. I enjoy them both. You just take people where they're at. Let's go. I think the biggest thing is to come in with a sincere desire to work on ourselves, right? And hey, I'm here because I want to get better, and then a fire in our belly to build something and to grow something. And those are the people who I like. One's walking in the door saying, "Hey, I'm here to work on myself. I know I don't have it all figured out, but man, I'm on fire about making this thing right." Just like the three of you guys are. So.
Yeah, I hope that that's something that people take from these conversations is that this isn't rehearsed and polished and we're learning as we go and we're just guys and we have had this idea that we've been bouncing around for a while and at some point you got to go. At some point you got to just take the leap and we might suck at the beginning, but it'll get better as we go. And so hopefully we can do some good with this. But Dallas, we are very lucky to have you kind of in our Rolodex, I would say, where you're a very busy guy, you've got a lot going on. We're very thankful that you came here to record with us. We're extremely thankful for the Ranching for Profit School, the Executive Link program. Yeah, like I said, nobody's getting paid for anything here. We're just telling the truth. It's been life-changing for all three of us. So if you're out there and you're thinking about going, I hope that our stories can encourage you to go. If the price is an issue, look into the scholarship program. But man, it's been so good for us. We just like to see other people experience that good too. So how can people contact you? How can they follow along with RMC or any of the things that you're involved with?
Yeah, I hope they go on our website, ranchingforprofit.com. There's a pop-up window that'll happen. Throw your email in there. You'll get our emails twice a month. Read our newsletters, watch our YouTube videos. But I think the real key is interacting with people like yourselves and talk to somebody that's been through the school. Ask them, if it was a good investment of time and resources. A nudge I would give folks if they're thinking of coming, if you have a spouse, a partner that's doing this with you, I think it's really important for the two of you to come together. I think it makes the program so much more impactful. And then you're there captured and forced to have those conversations that normal life doesn't allow you to have. So if there's a way to come together, make that happen.
Yeah, and I'll second that because we we actually had an EL meeting that none of the Ys could attend.
I think Melissa was the only one that was there to keep us in line.
Yeah, Melissa might have been the only one with Clayton. I mean, it was just like, what did we even accomplish here? And I remember getting back and Ellie's like, "This is what you guys talked about? Seriously?"
Yeah. Yeah, it was not
And
good.
I mean, I remember, I don't know, it was like second day, and I'm like, because I don't remember, she had a school that she was going to or something.
Yeah, it was a horse massaging school or
Oh,
chiropractic
she was in
school or something.
chiropractic school, yeah. And
Yeah.
she goes, "How's the meetings going?" I went, "Man, this is pathetic." I was like, I don't know whose idea it was that thought, us 5 guys and Melissa, poor Melissa, you know, us 5 guys and Melissa could come up
I
with.
think Caitlin was there also, so I
Was
think we had
Caitlin there?
yeah, but, it was they were pretty fresh in the board, and so
Yeah, must have
it
been,
wasn't like
but, oh,
yeah,
man, I'll second that. If you're gonna go, make sure your spouse is going with you, because
absolutely.
our meetings are 20 times better when our spouses are there, and it might not be so much at the actual school, but, like, through EL. I mean, it is truly like, "No, that's not right." Like, "Don't say that. That's not right. You're not telling the truth." If we're gonna do this, and I mean, so there's some accountability there. And that was one thing that I couldn't understand at the beginning. I'm like, "Well, man, blah, blah, blah. This is my business." No, I was completely wrong about that. 'Cause she's like, I mean, she will, my wife, I mean, God bless her soul, but man, she'll call me on anything if I slip up, and that's how it should be. So yeah, I highly encourage anybody that's going to attend the school, or even think about getting into EL. You need to bring your wife. That way you're both on the same page. You both can talk about the same lingo, the same terms, terminology, all that stuff. So I would definitely recommend that as well.
Zach, does your wife ever have anything to say about you?
When does she not? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, y'all know, she's kind of the spotlight on our operation, so
Yeah.
I'm just along for the ride.
Well, let me tease this little dangerous thing out. The women are getting together to do their own episode to tell the other side of the story. So y'all look forward to that
It's
here.
a one-time thing. It's not gonna be they're not gonna take over and have their own show, I promise.
I wonder whose wife is spearheading that deal. Anyways,
The other thing I would tell whoever's on the fence about going is that if you decide to go, be sincere about your actual numbers, because that's the only way you're going to actually get help. Because if you can't be truthful about what your real numbers are, you're wasting money going, because it's not going to help you.
well, Dallas, listen, thank you doesn't cut it. You know that, and I'm glad that you're here. You've been a blessing to all three of us. Anybody that has any questions, get a hold of us on our Facebook page. All three of us have access to that. If you have any questions about the school, reach out to us there. We can answer any questions you have there. If you want to talk to a specific one of us, just throw that in the message. But beyond that, there's going to be a link below for Ranching for Profit where people can find all of your information. There will be a link for the scholarship pledge page and the scholarship application page. But, we wanted to get you on early because this is what we want to do. This is one thing that's been life changing for all of us. And we want the people that listen to this, we want to encourage them to have that too.
Thank you. Appreciate it, guys.
We appreciate you, Dallas.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Ranch Rolodex. Remember that success in ranching and in life is rarely built alone. If this episode brought you any value, subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with someone who would benefit from it. Find us on Facebook and Instagram at the Ranch Rolodex for more conversations, behind-the-scenes content, and resources for ranchers. Until next time, we hope you learn from those ahead of you, encourage those beside you, and invest in those behind you.